Get your buzz on. Sports Buzz is here to take all calls and answer all questions about your favorite team, coach, or player, local, regional, and national. Sports Buzz, taking calls and kicking game.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday Sports Buzz presented by livingforless.org. This is Louisville's only live TV sports talk show. We're here every Sunday night from 11 to 12, and we're taking your phone calls. 964-2121, the Oxmoor Ford Lincoln Buzz line. I'm your host, Greg Brom. I'm joined again this week by Nick Coffey, the founder of CardinalConnect.com and the host of Inside the Press Box on 1450 The Sports Buzz. Nick's become a regular guest of ours here on the Sunday night show, and Nick, great to have you again.
Glad to be back. A lot of stuff going on. We're getting into the thick of things with college football in full gear, and then of course you got basketball starting up here in the first exhibition game this week. So excited to be here. A lot to get to.
Yeah, and since you were on last time, a lot of things, like you said, have happened. Louisville lost to Central Florida, and last week bounced back, yesterday bounced back with a 34-3 trouncing of South Florida. And, it was a game that wasn't in doubt. Louisville did dominate. Do you think everything is back to normal? Is all right with the Cards?
I mean, I think there's still some area where you can be critical. If you're a fan, they didn't look great, but really that's what you needed to get. You need to get that. I mean, I don't think the loss is fully behind you until you get back in the win column, and they did that. They played well defensively. South Florida's not a good team. But you saw some good things, and I think the morale of the guys certainly seemed different after that win, of course, and totally different than what it was a week prior. But I still think there's some lingering effects from that first loss as much as you kind of move on, and now, there is hope that you could get back to a BCS bowl game, but the big thing is, it's not really in your control. You're going to need some things to happen, and I think it still stings a little bit.
Yeah, and you're right. The BCS chances, I think, though, Nick, got better over the weekend. Houston beat Rutgers at Rutgers.
Pretty convincingly.
Houston now undefeated with Central Florida at the top of the league. If some way Houston and Central Florida and Louisville all end up in a three-way tie, Louisville will probably have the higher BCS standings, would get the BCS bowl berth. Louisville has a much better shot of getting a three-way tie with Houston involved than Rutgers.
Sure.
Rutgers they weren't going to run the table. You would have needed Rutgers to run the table, beat Central Florida. Houston can run the table, and except for Louisville hopefully beating them.
They look like the team that can do it.
You could possibly, I think the chances went way up.
No, there's no doubt about it. Houston looks to be like a pretty good team, and hopefully they can win out other than when they play Louisville, of course, as you mentioned. But, I can't help but wonder, if there is that three-way tie, the tiebreaker is the team with the highest BCS ranking. And right now Louisville has the highest BCS ranking. They actually jumped up over the weekend from number 20 to number 19, which is a good sign. I think Central Florida is number 23. But there's a part of me that kind of wonders if it gets to that point at the end of the year. I know the BCS has a lot of different factors with different polls and computers and whatnot. But will voters, the human poll voters, will they kind of see, well, okay, this team, Louisville, right now they have a few spots ahead of Central Florida, but they beat them. So why are we gonna reward a team like Central Florida?
Well, it looks like the voters in the poll actually finally got the word that Central Florida beat Louisville. Because last week Louisville was still ranked ahead of Central Florida. This week, miraculously, they both win big. Central Florida kind of creeped ahead.
Yeah, they had
a
week late on their climb.
Yeah, they're not even, that's how much they're not paying attention to the American Athletic Conference, is that it took them 2 weeks to figure out that Central Florida beat Louisville. But if a three-way tie does occur, and all that has to happen is Louisville, you beat Houston, Houston, you beat Central Florida. If that happens, everybody else, you win the rest of your games. Louisville, by virtue of they're going to have like a 6-game winning streak at the end of the year, I think they're going to have the higher BCS ranking.
Yeah, one thing that's not talked about a lot is the timing of your losses, how important that is. I think Louisville, when they went into that game against Florida in the Sugar Bowl, they had just lost 2 games. Well, of course, they had Rutgers at the very end, but they had those 2 losses towards the end. You got to think, maybe if they'd have taken one of those losses mid-season rather than at the end of the last quarter of the season, they probably would have been, because as good as the season ended last year, their polls really weren't. They really didn't finish that highly in the polls, considering they beat one of the better teams in the country in a BCS bowl game. So I do think the timing of that loss, although it's unfortunate you didn't really expect to have one loss at all this year, the fact that it happened then, you're able to you have some games to really move on.
Yeah, and we talked about how the team looked yesterday. I was on Twitter at the beginning of the game. There was a lot of criticism early on about the play calling, about the run plays, and the slow developing run plays in the backfield. I think, though, you did see during the course of the game that Dominique Brown solidified his spot as the number one back. I mean, he's a downhill runner. I mean, he slashes through the line of scrimmage. I do think, though, that Louisville, the more I watch them, I don't see that big play spark. No. It's a methodical offense. That's why I think fans are grumbling a bit, because it takes them a while to score. They've got to move the ball down the field small chunks at a time, it seems like. And I haven't seen the quick strike.
It's really interesting to me. The offense, I saw something on Twitter during the game yesterday that it was probably the best way to describe this offense. They don't ever really get stopped, but yet they don't really ever do anything. You know, they score some points, but they don't really, they've got weapons, but they're not really high power. Like you mentioned, they don't have that spark. And I think when you do get big plays, it's usually with Teddy Bridgewater airing it out and Devontae Parker making a big play. But it's a unique offense. It's something you don't really see a lot, because from the top to bottom, as far as the skill position, I think they're really good. I don't know of other teams that, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm biased, but I think Louisville has weapons all over the field. I will say this, I think the offensive line kind of took a step back yesterday. That's one thing I think fans
he got beat up.
Yeah, he did. And I think Sean Watson took a lot of grief yesterday from fans on Twitter with the play calling, which really I think it's overblown a lot. Mm-hmm. But at the same point in time, the offensive line didn't really do their job. They didn't protect Teddy whatsoever.
I kind of feel like South Florida may have been selling out on the blitz early at least, and just saying, hey, we have no hope. We're just going to send the house and hit the quarterback.
Yeah, why not?
Maybe it took Louisville a little while to adjust to the fact that they're blitzing everywhere. They're bringing the house. And then they got more onto what they were doing and started to move the ball, score a little bit more. But Louisville wins 34-3 yesterday. You know what? This is very interesting right now, I think, Nick, because Louisville has a week off. Then they play at Connecticut, a game that you would think that Louisville could do exactly what they did to South Florida. Then Houston comes. So I actually think this week off, I think you'll see Louisville in practice, even though they won't tell the players. The coaches will be working on Houston.
Oh, yeah,
I can promise you that. That's almost 2 weeks. That's almost 3 weeks to get ready for your next biggest game of the year.
And, I mean, they did that. They didn't really talk about it until the week that it happened, but they did that a lot when they played FIU. I think they prepared for Rutgers a little bit because it was a shorter week, and they knew that Rutgers was going to be an important game. But, I mean, I don't really know on the national scale what this game will mean to anybody, but it does give Louisville one of the very few chances they have to actually go out and prove something a little bit. Beating a team like in Houston, who knows how good they really are, but they're winning games right now. They're putting up a lot of points. I mean, what they did to Rutgers over the weekend, Rutgers isn't a great team, but they're definitely scoring the ball. So I think that to have
Which I think gives them a chance to win at Central Florida.
Sure, no doubt. Now, I think that to have another test will be good for them, and it'll be interesting to see where they are.
Okay, our number 964-2121, the Osmore Ford Lincoln Buzzline. When we come back, we'll talk about UK football. We'll talk about basketball. Exhibitions coming up this week. Even talk a little bit about the World Series. This is the Sunday Sports Buzz presented by livingforless.org.
Sports Buzz will return after these messages from our sponsors.
When I was hurt in my car wreck, I needed an attorney who had the power to go against the big insurance company.
I'm attorney Darrell Isaac to Hammer. If you've been hurt in a car wreck, you need power. Call me. Put the power of the Hammer on your side.
The landscape of sports radio has changed in a big way. 1450 The Sports Buzz has you covered with the best and most local and national programming in the Kentuckiana area. Mason and Myers in the morning, The Dan Patrick Show, The Afternoon Drive with Karen Johnson and Trevor Kelsey, and Inside the Press Box with Nick Coffey, as well as the best high school coverage in the area. Get the best coverage in Kentucky and Southern Indiana with 1450 The Sports Buzz and 1450thesportsbuzz.com.
From the streets of Philadelphia to a drive-thru near you, it's Rally's new Philly cheesesteak sub, loaded up with authentic, juicy Philly steak. Then we pile it big with some kickin' grilled onions and hot melted Swiss on a crunchy toasted sub roll. Rally's new Philly cheesesteak sub, just $1.99, an unreal price for the real taste of Philly. Rally's, feast on.
Cart Pass. This deal hits hard, but it won't last long.
Not sure where your future's headed? Turn it around today by starting an education at Brown Mackie College for a career as a practical nurse. You can learn to work directly with physicians to help determine the best course of care, monitor patient progress, provide the bedside comfort they need, even teach families how to care for loved ones at home. Get there with one course a month. Get there with Brown Mackie College.
Call Brown Mackie College Louisville today at 1-866-241-3220.
The other guy's insurance company offered to fix my car, but they only offered me $750 for my injuries, and then they wanted me to sign this.
Don't sign anything till you talk to me. You may be giving up thousands of dollars by signing the insurance company's release forms. Call in the Hammer.
Welcome back to Sunday Sports Buzz, presented by livingforless.org. I'm your host, Greg Brom, along with Nick Coffey from Inside the Press Box and thecardinalconnect.com. We've been talking about Louisville football. The big news this week on the football side was Clint Hurt. The report and the sanctions come out against Miami. Clint Hurt gets a 2-year show cause penalty. Tom Jurich chooses to keep Clint Hurt. What was your reaction? You think it's okay for Louisville to keep a coach who was actually concluded by the NCAA that he had broken various rules at Miami.
Various rules and lied about it.
Lied about it.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. That whole day, when the 2-year show cause came out, I honestly thought that for the right thing Louisville to do would be move on. I mean, not a lot of people agree with me, but I thought that probably would have been their best move. But when I thought about Jurich making an announcement, a lot of people had just assumed that Hurt was going to be gone, but I don't know what it was, but there was no doubt in my mind that they were going to keep him, and I don't really know why, but I just had a gut feeling.
The fact that he was still there,
yeah,
to me, I figured they're keeping him.
Sure.
Or else he'd have been gone a long time ago. They had already gone through a lot just to have him around. I mean, they had taken him off the road and done various things. I thought they were going to keep him. You know what? I'm never in favor of a guy losing his job.
Sure.
I'm really not. I'd like to give as many second chances, as many chances you can possibly to a guy if you think he's a good person, to allow him to keep his job. Now, playing devil's advocate to that, Clint Hurt has a version of events. The NCAA says he lied. Tom Jurich says he believes Clint Hurt. What I would ask is, Clint, what's your version of events? Where are the discrepancies?
Yeah.
Is it about immaterial little things, just we recollect things differently, or is your story, Clint? I want to hear a story because I want to know if it's unbelievable. If it's unbelievable and Louisville saying, well, I believe him,
Sure.
I want to hear a little more of the details.
And I would think for them to conclude and charge him with unethical conduct and misleading them, I would think they would have to be pretty strong on that, meaning they have to really believe that. They can't just go off of hearsay. The only real details we have now, as you mentioned, is just that the recruit stories are a little bit different than Clint Hurt stories, and that's
and if that's all they have, and the NCAA says we believe the recruits, and Louisville says we believe Clint Hurt, and there's nothing else, you know what? I'm okay with I'd be okay with saying I believe Clint over the recruits.
Yeah, and I think a guy like Clint Hurt, I think he's really important to this program, not just because of recruiting. A lot of people say, well, what if he's not recruiting, what does he really bring to the table?
He's recruiting, even if he's not on the road. Let me tell you that.
And even if he's not out there, he's been doing recruiting for so long. Guys at this school in Florida, well, Clint Hurt might not be there directly or talking to them directly about this recruit, but coaches know who he is. They want to send him to go play for him.
And another question you might ask too is, Clint Hurt has a great reputation as a recruiter, but was that reputation built on skirting the rules, extra benefits? Is that why he has all these connections? And now is he going to benefit from being able to do it that way for a while at Miami, and now he reaps the benefits for his new program? You got to ask those types of questions. But as I said, I'm always in favor of coaches keeping their job. Yeah, and I think Tom has the political capital to make this decision. And actually, I think the story's almost gone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost nobody's talking about it except us as we clean up the week. But I'm okay with it. But has Louisville lost the ability, Louisville fans, the capability to criticize John Calipari?
Oh, there's no doubt.
In previous cheating episodes,
there's no doubt,
because of what happened with Clint Hurt.
I mean, you
have a
guy on your staff who has been charged for NCAA violations, and there's no way around hiding that. It does. You kind of use that. You lose that in your trash talking arsenal. You don't really have that to throw out there. But the one big thing
it's fun to throw that out too.
Yeah,
I hate to lose
one
that.
One thing that's different is that Clint Hurt, he's a big part of the program, but he's not the head coach. So maybe you still have a little bit, but either way, you still.
Let's go to Mike on the Oxmoor Ford Lincoln Buzz line. Mike.
Hey, how you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Good. Listen, just make a couple quick comments here real quick. First one is about what you guys were just talking about Clint Hurtt. Obviously, if they were losing, he'd be gone. It wouldn't even be up for discussion. If they were losing, he'd be gone.
He's here because he can
that,
get players, too. Whether they're losing or not, he can get players. That's why he's still here.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. But the other thing is I'm a UK fan, and UK and U of L both have exactly the total opposite problem here about the football team. UK is so their schedule is so tough that they're so young that they can't get better because they can't get some wins to build their confidence. U of L's problem is they've got a good team, but they don't play any competition to prove to them that they're a good team to be able to get better each week.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that U of L really had a situation where I know that they tried to schedule some people to try to get a home-and-home thing, but if they knew they were going to be this good this year, they should have bit the dust and said, okay, well, we'll go to a Georgia or we'll go to an LSU or whatever without a return game because we know that's our only chance. Now, if they really wanted to play for a national championship and really thought they had a chance to do that, it looks to me like that's what they would have done and hope to be able to go win those games.
Yeah.
And then maybe next year, of course, they're going to be moving to the ACC to have that opportunity to have those home and away games.
Yeah, you know what, Mike, and I do. I've been saying that. And now sometimes you don't know you're going to be that good until it's almost too late.
Sure.
To even get a
scheduling takes place
to even get a road game, you got to do a little bit out in front. Sometimes you don't know you're going to be that good until Teddy Bridgewater shows up, and sometimes that's too late to do anything about it. But Louisville was insistent on the home and home. And you know what? You can every now and then I think you can go play a big game on the road, and if it's beneficial to you. And I've said that before, but I do agree with this point. We got to go to break, Nick. We'll talk about it maybe after the break. But Louisville almost maybe doesn't have a spark that we want to see because they're bored with the teams they're playing. They're not challenged enough to really elevate. They don't have to. It's almost too easy sometimes.
They can play bad and win.
Absolutely, they play bad and win. They kind of that gets into your play a little bit, even subconsciously. Okay, let's take a break. We'll be back. We're going to talk some basketball, UK football too. This is Sunday Sports Buzz presented by livingforless.org.
Sports Buzz will return after these messages from our sponsors.
Little Bo Peep wanted a car for keeps. She looked all around and got turned down. Then she met the fine folks here at Jim Brown Auto Sales.
Don't let the wool be pulled over your eyes. Come see my daddy's flock of cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs with down payments as low as $99. Visit us today on the web at www.JimBrownAutoSales.com. Who's your daddy?
¿Quién es su papá? Cha cha.
Smart shoppers, 'cause this is how you roll.
Get everything you need to make that old ride look new again at Smart Shoppers, the region's largest auto body supplier, providing you the full line of professional-grade materials at the best prices around. Paint like the pros with a full line of House of Color paint products, only at
Smart Shoppers, 'cause this is how you roll.
The day of the accident was a normal day for me. I'm driving down a busy road. The speed limit's about 50 miles per hour. As soon as the impact happened, my body just jolted forward. The pain that I experienced immediately afterwards was so intense, the migraine headache, the numbness in my fingers. Immediately after the accident, I remembered to call 1-800-ASK-GARY. I feel like I was referred to the right center, to the right doctors that were able to help me get back on my feet again.
Ask Gary is open 24/7. Call 1-800-ASK-GARY.
There's sometimes that there are things in your life that you just got to take the sword of the Spirit. You got to take the word and you got to chop that thing out of your life. Jesus said, if your hand causes you to sin, let a sound arise, oh God, out of this place. Let destiny be birthed. It's being poured out.
Mike brought up before the break UK football and Louisville have an opposite problems. UK football's schedule is so tough that with the young players, it's just no hope. While Louisville's schedule is so soft, there's no challenge. They can't get better. It's almost too easy sometimes. That's why it kind of looks methodical in the approach that they have. We talked about Louisville. Let's go over to Kentucky's side. Mark Stoops, they lose a close one, 28-22 at Mississippi State. Nick, it looks to me like, Mark Stoops is trying hard.
Yes, he is.
He's taking these losses harder than the UK fan base is. I mean, it's tearing him up. You can tell.
Yeah, there's not any moral victories for Mark Stoops. And I think it was something I asked you on the radio show a couple weeks ago, is because you're starting to see the frustration week after week getting worse with him. I mean, his body language is not good. He's trying to rally his guys, but he does not like losing all these games. Yeah, he needs. But what I asked you was that is he just now realizing that he is at Kentucky and this is going to be tough?
Wait till basketball actually does start. Then you're going to really realize you're at Kentucky.
Yeah, that's true.
Coach Stoops, UK fans are actually happy, and you've won one game.
Exactly.
I mean, you can relax a little bit. It's not Tallahassee. You're okay. You've got plenty of time, I think. But he has a little bit of a problem, and that's quarterback.
Yes.
And Jalen Whitlow looks like he's the best one he has for sure when he stays healthy. I want to ask you this though: next year, who starts the first game at quarterback for Kentucky?
That's going to be a great question, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. I would think that if Drew Barker is able to, they would just throw him out there and let him go. If he's up to standard. You thought a guy like Patrick Towles would have that opportunity because he was such a highly regarded quarterback, but it turns out he just flat out isn't necessarily as good as people thought he was going to be. But then again,
I think they've told him. Here's what I think they've told him. The only reason he's still there. This is just my personal opinion, because why would he still be there? Not getting any opportunity is, hey, this is going to be a bad year. We'll redshirt you. Now, next year, you have a fair shot to compete with Barker. And the best man win. But this year, we're not going to play you. Doesn't matter how bad it gets, we're not going to play you.
That would make sense because Jalen Whitlow, he's a playmaker and whatnot, but really going forward, especially with Neil Brown and what he likes to do, that's not Jalen Whitlow. That's just simply not who you would go with. And a guy like Max Smith, unfortunately for him, his injury, I mean, he's just not good right now. I mean, he's injury, he's just made him a very ineffective quarterback, and it's tough to even see him out there continuously not playing well. But that's a good point.
They had to throw all screens in the game practically with Max Smith.
The two Kentucky guys, though, next year make an interesting offseason storyline if you got Towles and Barker battling for that starting spot.
Yeah, absolutely. They're trying to fall in the long legacy of the long shadow of Tim Couch.
Yeah.
He can be the next homegrown Kentucky guy to take over a quarterback for the Cats. Let's go to Steve on the Oxmoor Ford Lincoln Buzz Line.
How's it going, fellas?
Good.
Steve.
Good. Listen, I may be reaching for the stars here, but is there any chance that Teddy Touchdown wants to come back next year and play in the ACC and maybe visit some of his old schoolmates and everything before they go pro, or some of them that won't even make it to the pros? He gets to visit and play them again. I don't really know what their schedule will be as far as Florida State or Miami or them, but
I think they got them both. They have them both on the schedule. You know what, Steve, I think it's wishful thinking.
Yes, it is.
I don't spend too much energy dreaming of that, because I would tell him you can't come back. If I was Charlie Strong, I'd say do not come back. I mean, you have to go now. I wouldn't risk it. I would not risk it if I was him. I would go to the NFL and get your contract.
Anybody looking out for Teddy Bridgewater's best interest would not let him return, and I think that would be the right decision. However, though, when you look at, the personality of some college quarterbacks, the guys who are on that national stage like Teddy Bridgewater is, regarded as one of the top 5 in the country, I think as far as a player, as a kid, if there is one guy that would consider coming back, it would be Teddy Bridgewater, but it still would be an extreme long shot. And it's just, anybody, like I said, anybody looking out for his best interest would advise him to go. But it would be interesting because that totally changes your first year in that conference if he was to come back. But it's just not likely.
I've heard some talk, though, recently, and I don't know if it's Louisville's loss or just some of these other quarterbacks getting some more attention around the country, that, it was a lock that he was the number one quarterback taken. I don't know, from some of the buzz you hear now, maybe it's just because the guy was always the favorite. You try to poke holes in him the entire year. Sometimes it's good not to be number one on Mel Kiper's list preseason because they poke holes in you. But I mean, how if he's is either one or two, or is there any chance he could fall below that in quarterbacks taken in the draft, or is he lock number one, best pro prospect?
I mean, it sounded like there was nothing he could do this season that would change him from being projected as the best quarterback available and the number one pick. I mean, in the offseason, you had, obviously, Jadeveon Clowney was the guy who was going to be the first overall pick because he was such a, once-in-a-lifetime prospect, and then Teddy Bridgewater would be the first offensive guy. Even when the season started, Clowney kind of dropped a little bit, and then Teddy was not only regarded as the best quarterback available, he was going to be the best player overall. Since Louisville's loss, I'm not sure how that changes Bridgewater's stock, but it has. You've got Marcus Mariota now up there. Johnny Manziel's been just as good this year as he was last year for the most part, even though his team has taken a couple losses. So it'll be interesting. I honestly, when you don't really know what to believe, but guys who quote unnamed NFL scouts and guys who work for teams, they talk like that. There's not even anybody close to Teddy Bridgewater as far as projecting to the NFL, but you never know.
I think Clowney's the number one pick.
Yeah.
I think he is good. Just his athleticism, his numbers, his physical numbers are going to solidify him, even with his attitude and things that maybe he's pulled. I think Clowney will be the number one pick. Our number 964-2121, the Oxmoor Ford Lincoln Buzz Line. We want to hear from you. Talking football mostly the first half. We're going to turn to basketball shortly. But looking at the BCS standings, you did have Oregon jump Florida State today in the BCS standings. So it's Alabama, Oregon, Florida State, and Ohio State in the BCS standings. I think Stanford was fifth, ahead of Baylor. And Baylor's going to play. A lot of these teams are going to play each other, knock each other out. But something interesting to me, you have the same scenario you had last year developing where Northern Illinois popped into the BCS.
Yep.
They have to, if you're in the top 16 and you're a non-automatic qualifying league, you get a team in the top 16 and they're ranked ahead of the champion of a qualifying league. So let's say Fresno is ranked ahead of Louisville. They're ranked ahead of South Central Florida. Fresno could pop in there to the BCS, and they were even projecting. How about this Fiesta Bowl? Baylor versus Fresno. I mean, I doubt that that's going to get a lot of.
No, I mean last year it was Northern Illinois and Florida State in the Sugar Bowl, in the Orange Bowl, wasn't it?
It was, and I didn't watch a second of the game.
And that's gonna. I mean, as bad as that sounds, and maybe unfair it is to Fresno. It's just not a big game that people are going to want to watch.
How many unbeatens will there be at the end of the year?
Everybody says that eventually they're going to happen. You'll only have 2 or 3. I think you could have 4 or 5. I really do think this is the year where you could have that.
Yeah, and playoff is next year. This might be the better year to have the playoff. Our number, 964-2121. We come back, we're going to talk about the Louisville Cardinals and their mini dynasty here at the Sunday Sports Buzz presented by livingforless.org.
Sports Buzz will return after these messages from our sponsors.
Hey, Joe here for Joe's OK Bayou. There are 2 things I've learned in the almost 20 years of doing business. First, every Cajun has their own secret recipe to a good gumbo. And second, I never claim to be better than Mama's cooking. We've been cooking up true Cajun for a long time now, and I think we're starting to win over some moms. Well, there might be a few tough moms out there yet to convince, but we're making progress. Stop in today and see for yourself how we measure up to Mom.
Joe's okay by you. It's okay by me. I mean, Mama.
Hi, I'm Jim Weeks. At MaxCare, no project is too big. We have the capabilities to handle the smallest residential project to the largest commercial undertaking. We even clean big houses like this one. And everyone has been abuzz about our amazing 4 areas for $99 special. We want to let everyone know that MaxCare also cleans upholstery, ceramic tile, and air ducts. We also install and refinish hardwood floors, dust-free. MaxCare, locally owned and family operated. Give us a call, 636-4629.
Hi everyone, I'm Stacy Spencer, the executive producer and host of the Just Teens television program and the founder of Teen Time Productions. And we are a grassroots nonprofit organization, and your contributions matter. We need to continue producing positive television programming for the teens of this nation. Please go to the website at the bottom of the screen and learn how you can become a sponsor. And remember, it takes positive people in positive places to make a world of difference.
Greg Brom along with Nick Coffey here tonight on the Sunday Sports Buzz presented by livingforless.org. And our number is 964-2121. Give us a call. We want to hear from you. We've had some good points tonight from Mike and Steve who have called us. But we're going to turn to basketball now. We talked a little football. Let's turn to basketball. The exhibition season is starting this week. Louisville plays Kentucky Wesleyan on Tuesday night. Rick Pitino had a couple of interesting comments this week. I want to start with this one. Rick started to mention this run that Louisville's been on, Final Four championship, and he said that Louisville is one more Final Four away from a mini dynasty. It would be 3 Final Fours in a row, one of which, let's just say they don't win it, they just make it to the Final Four, one of which for sure is the title. Does that qualify to you, Nick, as a mini dynasty?
If I'm thinking of a mini dynasty, I'm thinking of like a 5-year stretch. I think 3 years, it would be considered a great success. I mean, that's 3 great seasons in a row. But when I think dynasty, I just think longer term. And even when you throw mini on it, I'm still thinking longer than 3 years. I think it's debatable. And if they win a championship now, then maybe you can start talking about it. But I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I'd call that a mini dynasty.
You know what? I think when I think of mini dynasty or dynasty, and whether it's mini or full-blown dynasty, I tend to think you got to win more than one title. I mean,
fair enough.
And think of Florida when they won back-to-back titles. Even with that, they won 2 titles. I don't think of that as a mini dynasty. It was too short. I think you do have to have more than 2. Like you have to have 3 of something. You know, the Patriots won 3 Super Bowls, kind of a dynasty. Even Kentucky, 96 to 98, I'd call that a mini dynasty. They won 2 titles and made the championship game the other year. I think it'd be a great. I mean, I think you might barely qualify it as a mini dynasty because you had 1 title. UCLA a few years ago went to the Final Four 3 years in a row, and nobody even knows they did it.
Exactly.
Because they didn't win at all. But I think maybe they're just short of a mini. You got to maybe win another title. But it's a great run. I'll take it.
Yeah, I would definitely take it. It will be interesting to see if they do get back to the Final Four because that's going to, Louisville's had a lot of success as a program for the last 30 years. They've had now 3 national championships when you look at 80, 86, and then 2013. But the 3 back-to-back Final Fours, I don't think Denny didn't do that, I don't believe.
No, Denny didn't do that.
So although it's not a mini dynasty.
It's only been done a few times.
Yeah.
Duke went 5 in a row in the late 80s, early 90s. Of course, UCLA. Kentucky. There's been very few. You got to go way back, I think, to San Francisco.
Yeah.
They were pulling up some records of teams that have gone to 3 straight finals. I think maybe many times. I think maybe you barely qualify. It's great to get another title. I think actually though, Rick, this run is not about over. I do not think it's over.
I agree with that.
I think that Louisville's going back this year. They're going to the Final Four, and I think over the next 3 to 4 years, you might have a couple more. I think it might be a full-fledged dynasty. But look at Kentucky. If Cal wins the title this year, does he get to say 3 Final Fours in 4 years and 2 titles? Are we a mini dynasty?
But if you bring up that NIT appearance, does that kind of take away
from your dynasty? A dynasty you got to extend continuous, right?
It gets interesting because I think if you take away that 1 season, he's been unbelievable in his time there at Kentucky with what he's gotten. But that 1 NIT at 1 season. Unfortunately for them, you can't just erase it. It happened.
All right. I want to hear from you. Is it a mini dynasty? Louisville gets to the Final Four. Do they have to win it to qualify? Or is it just getting back again? Or does neither qualify them in the dynasty category? 964-2121, the Oxmoor Ford Lincoln Buzz line. Shane Bohannon as well. He's suspended indefinitely. Further, off the team. He's off the team. That was the first comment.
No longer with the program.
Until we decide to bring him back. Yeah. And it looks like it might be sooner than earlier thought. Rick said something like it's going to be a short period of time. Does he make the first regular season game?
I'll be honest with you. I've always maintained that I think he'll be back with the team sooner than some people would have expected. 2 weeks ago, if you'd have told me that it was, that it would have been, not 2 weeks ago, but a week ago, if you'd have told me that it would be season opener, I'd say no way. As of right now, I got to say, if I have to bet, I would think he'd be there.
Season opener. I'm going to say December 1. I'm going to say he doesn't make the season opener, but December, the very 1st of December, the clock hits midnight on December 1. He's practicing, and I think he'll be back at least by then. I think what I saw in the exhibition, he looked like a first-round draft choice. I think that Louisville is so good, though. that even without him, they'd be Final Four caliber team. With him, they're a championship caliber team. Of course, Kentucky, Nick, has high hopes, as John Calipari's spoken of 40-0 sometime in his career. Young group, though. Does UK? Let me ask you this: when Louisville and Kentucky play each other, December 12th, how many losses do each of them have, or have they either lost?
That's going to be a good question. Louisville will play a team, North Carolina, I believe, is the toughest game on the schedule outside of Kentucky. It's totally not unrealistic to say Louisville could be unbeaten at that time when you look at who they're going to have to play. Kentucky, it's not unrealistic to say that either, considering they're preseason #1 in the country, but they're going to have some tough games on the schedule. I think that they play Michigan State.
They do play Michigan State, who's right up there, ranked #1 by some people.
It wouldn't surprise me if both teams are undefeated, but at the same point in time, I think that this Kentucky team is going to be a lot better than last year and whatnot. But I do think they'll have at least one loss by the time they head into that game, just because they're a younger team. In no way do I think we're going to see what we saw last year from them, but at the same point in time, there's going to be some learning experiences early on for them.
Which coach do you think is more confident about his team? Because Rick's saying, hey, he's talking mini dynasty. I mean, I think he feels really at ease that this team is going back. But then Cal talks about, which guy feels more confident that he has the best team?
That's a great question. I honestly would have to say I think Calipari is probably more confident in his team with what you've heard from him about these guys. But as you mentioned, Rick Pitino, he doesn't usually talk like this before season. I mean, although he's still maintaining that they're going to have to stay humble and they're going to have to stay focused and things like that, talking about, the one-day contract like his book and everything. But at the same point in time, he's making comments about his team and about players that you usually don't hear him make. He's always selling you short on things. And he came out at his press conference, he probably said this because of the loss of Shane Bohannon, but he just flat out said Montrezl Harrell is the best power forward in the country. And very rarely will you hear him make those kind of comments.
Yeah, he looks like it. He
does.
He looks flat out amazing. I think Rick does feel really kind of comfortable where they are, like he's in the catbird seat with the team he has coming back. We haven't heard from Luke Hancock. I want to ask you. Is he just going to hold him out to the playoffs like you do in the NBA with a grizzled veteran? Because you haven't seen Luke, you haven't heard much about Luke. Are we going to see Luke early on, and in what capacity? How's his injury coming along, and is he going to be a major factor early for this team?
I think he will be. A lot of people have said that, before that injury was actually announced and Rick Pitino even confirmed that Luke Hancock was injured, you had people at campus taking pictures of him with a walking boot and kind of saying, what's going on, because there hadn't been any word on it. And a lot of people said it was as an Achilles injury, not necessarily just the ankle. And Rick Pitino he was very vague on the whole thing, but he kind of said it was a mixture of both Achilles and the ankle. And if it's an Achilles injury, that's a lot more difficult to come back than an ankle. It sounds like he's not nearly as far along as they hope. Pitino said on his coach's show this week, they just came out and flat out said that he's going to miss some games. So I think it's going to be a little bit longer than people initially anticipated, but I do think he comes back. And fortunately, he's a guy that, he's not really going to benefit from the exhibition games and all that. What you see is what you get, but I do think he's going to be a big, important piece to this year's team, especially if you do end up seeing a guy like Wayne Blackshear step down and play a little bit in the post.
Yeah, and I think he's important in playmaking, because I think that replacing the playmaking point guard. Louisville's 2 point guards, even though Rozier has a little bit of that in him from what I've seen, I think that might be the guy who's going to penetrate and pass and be able to dish.
Yeah.
Luke ended up being a guy to get to the rim and do some of that last year. I think it's going to be important to have it. And Louisville must be the place, too, as we're going to go to break here. The people who want to extort money, they go to the University of Louisville, must have all the money in the world to extort. But one thing I can tell you, point shaving. Russ Smith is not going to shave 1 point that he could score, ever.
He never even knows the score anyway.
Not ever is he going to shave 1 point that he could possibly make. That's probably, the evidence supports Russ in that regard.
No doubt.
Our number, 964-2121. Give us a call talking U of L basketball, UK, football. We'll talk the NFL. We'll talk Major League Baseball. We're here with Nick Coffey, the Sunday Sports Buzz presented by LivingForLess.org.
Sports Buzz will return after these messages from our sponsors.
The landscape of sports radio has changed in a big way. 1450 The Sports Buzz has you covered with the best and most local and national programming in the Kentuckiana area. Mason and Myers in the morning, The Dan Patrick Show, The Afternoon Drive with Karen Johnson and Trevor Kelsey, and Inside the Press Box with Nick Coffey, as well as the best high school coverage in the area. Get the best coverage in Kentucky and Southern Indiana with 1450 The Sports Buzz and 1450thesportsbuzz.com.
Hey, Joe here for Joe's OK Bayou. There are two things I've learned in the almost 20 years of doing business. First, every Cajun has their own secret recipe to a good gumbo. And second, I never claim to be better than Mama's cooking. We've been cooking up true Cajun for a long time now, and I think we're starting to win over some moms. Well, there might be a few tough moms out there yet to convince, but we're making progress. Stop in today and see for yourself how we measure up to Mom.
Joe's okay by you. It's okay by me. I mean, Mama.
In today's dangerous driving conditions, safety is key. We're not all perfect drivers. Accidents do happen. 1-800-ASK-GARY can help you find a team of lawyers and doctors that can get you the help you need when you need it most. Call from the scene of the accident, day or night. Did I pass? You should call 1-800-ASK-GARY. Knowledge is power. Call 1-800-ASK-GARY, your auto accident helpline.
When you look back on a lifetime, you remember the things that sometimes you may have felt like they did not make a great difference. And then you realize the legacy you have created is more than you ever imagined. However you want your legacy remembered, we can help. You'll be remembered and honored at Louisville's newest memorial park, Crosswater Gardens Cemetery and Memorial Park, helping people just like you display their legacy for generations to come.
Thank you for watching the Sunday Sports Buzz every week. I hear from our loyal audience quite often, Nick. Even friends call me. Todd King, a good friend of mine, big UK fan, called me, said he kind of liked the show, even though he hated we talk so much about Louisville, but we do talk about Kentucky. Try to give an independent viewpoint on both of them. And if you like that, Nick and I are talking here on Sunday night. Join me on Thursdays with Nick during his show, which is Monday through Friday, 5 to 6 on 1450. I call in on Thursdays, have a great conversation with Nick about what's happened that week, what's happening this weekend. It's a segment brought to you by InsureMax, Chad and Alan Hennessy, 479-4085. All your home, life, and auto needs. It's Chad and Alan at InsureMax. And Nick Coffey's here with me tonight. And let's go right to the phone lines. As Chuck is on the line.
Yes, I want to talk about you talked about the mini dynasty about Louisville.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have, like you said, a time period, because even when Miami won the championship last year, they talked about how Miami's got to have 3 or 4 wins. So when you talk dynasty, I'm thinking like the Boston Celtics, LA Lakers. So to me, a dynasty would be people that have won 4 or 5 different championships in a row over a time period versus, one or 2 championships. So I think if Louisville goes back to the Final Four and wins another championship, then you can say it's a mini dynasty. But I think right now, because they have to have a long-term success over the years before you say a mini dynasty.
So do you think not just getting back to the Final Four, you got to have another championship? Is that what
right, you have another championship, because when Miami won their last championship, they talked about LeBron. They said, well, Kobe Bryant had 6 or 7 championships. He's got to get another championship.
Well, that's a good point, because LeBron's gone to 1 final and won 2 in a row. Is Miami a mini dynasty? Are they a mini dynasty right now, the Miami Heat?
I don't think so. I mean, when I think of it, I just think longer term. Even if we're throwing mini on it, I just think you would have to. I mean, Miami as a team, maybe LeBron, maybe he's his own mini dynasty with what he's doing. But I mean, as a franchise, Miami before LeBron and Dwayne Wade and they were together, that team wasn't even making the playoffs.
And then sometimes you'll get like a dynasty, or Rick did say mini dynasty, and I think he was bringing it down a notch. He was searching for a word probably other than dynasty to fit, because you had teams like San Francisco 49ers in the 80s. I mean, they didn't win they won a couple back-to-back, but it was over like a decade. They won Miami Hurricanes, the U. They won 4 titles over a number of years, and people kind of called that a dynasty. Even though it didn't happen in one stretch, it was over a number of years.
Yeah.
But it does have to be more than 2 years, I think. It's got to be 3 years at least, and you might have to have more than one championship.
You definitely have to get another championship in my mind. And even if they are able to get back to a Final Four this year, not win a championship, kind of like how you positioned it earlier, I honestly, even though it would be something that's very rarely been done in the history of college basketball, would be considered the best 3-year stretch in the history of Louisville basketball, I still don't call it a mini dynasty. It's just my personal.
All right, let's go back to the phone lines. And Steve, you're up.
Yeah, fellas. As far as the previous caller and suggesting Teddy might come back, I think most people feel like it didn't really work out very well for your little brother, Greg, and so they may,
Well, and that's where when I speak about it, I go from that experience, to be honest with you, and you can't get much you can't get much higher than the number one quarterback taken.
Very true.
And if he's thought of that way, he needs to go.
Yeah, and then the second point is, as far as U of L getting to the Final Four, which I hope they do, the one thing that could keep them from it, I think, would be either an injury or injuries to either Montrez or Luke or Shane or one of the key players. So that's my point, and I like your guys' show.
Well, hey, thank you very much. I tell you what, there was one moment during the one of the scrimmages.
The first scrimmage, I believe.
When Montrez went down. He went on the ground, and you could have heard a pin drop in the arena. The gasp. It made the Ohio River, the waves ripple through the Ohio River. Just the gasp of air that
it was a very painful cramp that I think resulted in every heart inside of the Yum Center had dropped to the floor.
Exactly. Yeah. One injury.
It sounded like it was done.
I'm serious. This guy looks so good too.
Yeah.
Even though I actually think Russ is going to have just an exceptional year. I mean, I think he'll average between 20 and 25 points, and maybe closer to 25 points a game. I think he's going to be that good. I mean, they have a lot more weapons though. A lot more people will be shooting, but he is something else.
I'm sure I'm biased, but it blows my mind that people forget how good he was last year. I mean, he was one of the best players in the country last year. For a month of the season, you could argue that he was the player of the year in the country. And I honestly think that because he did kind of play bad in the championship game, kind of melted down a little bit, and also
remember he took a shot with like a minute to go. I remember Louisville was holding it or something. He took a. I'm like, don't turn into a ridiculous right now.
That game, I think, is what people remember a little bit. And also, the most watched game in college basketball last year was the 6 overtime loss, where he just continuously, time and time again, melted in at the end of each overtime. But other than that, he was great all year, and he's not. I feel like he's not necessarily getting the respect that you would expect from a guy who's coming off leading the NCAA tournament in scoring for the national championship team. I mean, maybe I'm not.
You weren't here, and I've always been a proponent of Russ, and Rick has obviously gotten better able to handle the bad because of all the good that comes from Russ and his relation. He's mellowed with Russ. Russ has mellowed him. But I was here with Lachlan last week, and I threw out my theory of part of Rick has always been a great coach. But I think part of this great rebound, this great resurgence in Rick Pitino and the Louisville program, the Rick Pitino brand, is that he did happen to stumble across this little skinny, scrawny kid who just happened to come through the program that is unique. He's Manziel. He's the Johnny Manziel of college basketball. He's unique. That Russ Smith has really allowed Rick Pitino's style. He's allowed the whole system go to another level. I think he just stumbled across this guy named Russ Smith.
I think despite he has gotten better at how he deals with Russ Smith, but you still see him screaming at him on the sidelines and going crazy and, trying to get through to him. But that said, I think if you ask anybody close to the program, close to both of those guys, maybe ask Kevin Keats or someone maybe who's been around him a little longer, I think Russ Smith is one of Rick Pitino's most favorite players that he's ever coached ever of all time.
He'll be talking about him in similar lights to the way, at the end of this season, the way he talked about Peyton Siva, I believe, by the end of the year. And Russ changed how they play defense.
Yes.
I mean, Rick's always been a pressure guy, but the way Russ does it is another level, and that's why Louisville was feared, is because of that style of defense.
To that point, has there been a player in college basketball in the last decade that has affected both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively, like Russ Smith? As Anthony Davis was a defender like we've never seen, his offensive game wasn't quite as polished. Russ Smith was the guy who was scoring 20 points per game last year and is one of the better on-ball defenders in the country. That's why it gets back to my point is, he needs show some respect.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, our number 964-2121. When we come back, we'll talk to Steel Bill, and we're still taking your phone calls here at the Sunday Sports Buzz, presented by LivingForLess.org.
Sports Buzz will return after these messages from our sponsors.
Little Bo Peep wanted a car for keeps. She looked all around and got turned down. Then she met the fine folks here at Jim Brown Auto Sales.
Don't let the wool be pulled over your eyes. Come see my daddy's flock of cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs with down payments as low as $99. Visit us today on the web at www.JimBrownAutoSales.com. Who's your daddy?
¿Quién es su papá? Cha cha.
Keep getting our praise on.
The new Praise 1047.
When you tried it your way.
Welcome back home to WLOU.
Your Stellar Award-winning gospel radio station.
Praise Power 1350 WLOU and the new Praise 1047. It's WLOU on FM.
Hi, did you know that 90% of all disco balls are made here in Louisville? Right here in the Highlands. And did you know the song Happy Birthday to You was written right here in Louisville? Did you know F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote The Great Gatsby while stationed here in Louisville? Did you know Louisville's first internet service provider was Igloo Internet? And now we offer website design development and hosting services, all right here in Louisville.
There is the star of our lineup. You got Mike and Mike. You know, Dan Patrick, he's a has-been. You know, Jim Rome is irritating. But we listen to him because he's on 1450, a great lineup. But right there inside the press box from 5 to 6, it is the highlight of your day.
Sure.
Tune in to Nick Coffey. But that's a great lineup. We have Mike and Mike now, ESPN Radio. We have that show in the mornings. That's a great addition to the lineup. You look at that's some heavyweights right there.
I mean, you look at Mike and Mike, Dan Patrick,
We're not just
and
talking
Jim
about
Rome.
Trevor Kelsey.
Yeah.
We're talking heavyweights. But.
It's nice. That's a nice one, Greg. But you look at Mike and Mike, Dan Patrick, and Jim Rome. I'm not sure how many radio stations in the country that can provide you all three of those shows on the same station.
No, absolutely. They're a great warm-up act for the Sunday Sports Bus.
No doubt.
They are a week of warm-up acts for this show right here.
No doubt.
It's beautiful. We're going to get Mike and Mike on this couch one day, I promise. So we're here talking sports, as always. We were talking a little basketball there. Let's go to Steel Bill, who's been online waiting.
Hey, Greg, Nick, look here, I got two things for you. The McDonald's All-Americans up here in Kentucky. I watched them on TV during their high school career. I didn't see no defense. How they going to play defense when they athletically are scorers? And two, has anybody ever looked into James Young and the Harrison twins' grades? Back in June, they was having grade problems. Then a couple of weeks before school started, bingo, here they are. They eligible to play. Any comments on that?
Well, I tell you what, we talked a little bit. Do Louisville fans have the right to even say anything anymore after the hurt
Compliance.
compliance?
Yeah.
I mean, is there any Bledsoe situation going on in Kentucky with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to compliance, you probably lost that ammunition.
We lost that ammunition, man.
But he is right. There was some things coming up about those guys before the season started, but I think that was quickly handled, and as he mentioned, they're all good to go.
You know, Cal does a pretty good job of teaching defense.
Mm-hmm.
He does. He had those guys 2 years ago playing great defense.
That's one of the biggest things about him, that when he gets these guys to buy in. I mean, there's some of the better defensive teams in the country. It's always helped that he's had a guy like Anthony Davis and Nerlens Noel that can protect the rim. Marcus Cousins even further back. But that's one thing about Calipari that I think almost, I think that he's underappreciated when it comes to in regards of getting these guys to buy in defensively, because I don't know if there's many coaches in the country that, I mean, sure, if you take all the talent that he's been getting, every team's going to be good. But can he get them to collectively buy in? Last year he couldn't. They did not do that. They did not have a good team. But the year before, I mean, he had a team full of NBA lottery picks, and they bought in for the common goal. And I think that's easier said than done.
Yeah, he's the only one who's done it
Yep.
to that high level of success. And I guess he has the magic formula. It is going to be so interesting as we get that ball rolling this week with exhibition games. Nick, I introduced a little segment last week with Locke. It's our version of buy, sell. We just... Real basic, not any fancy name. Yes, no. Okay, bunch of yes, no questions. Give me a yes or no answer, And then you can elaborate with a few seconds or so, a couple sentences on each one. But Nick Saban complained about fans leaving. Think that we have it bad, or Charlie complaining. Nick Saban, 52-0. He got mad at the Alabama fans for leaving, and Alabama just mysteriously suspended seating privileges for 20 student groups the next week. Has Nick Saban's God complex gone too far?
Yes, yes, it has. But at the same point in time, when you're on that kind of run that he's on, he can do whatever the hell he wants.
That's way too much power, man. That guy, he runs the whole state.
Yeah.
That he's suspended. I mean, they say it's not suspended. He says he had nothing to do with
Sure.
it. But amazingly, after he complains, all of a sudden you can't sit the way you used to before. It's totally out of control. Okay, do you want to see Brett Favre playing quarterback again in the NFL?
No. I mean, not at all. It would be an interesting storyline, but he's done this whole charade too many times.
I definitely want to see it. I would pay money. They could put it on pay-per-view. I would buy it. It makes me feel young.
The old gunslinger?
I want to see anytime he's playing. I mean, you talk about making the NFL interesting, any game more interesting. Brett, you can still function. I think you can still function. Come on out of retirement, one last run. Do it for us guys who are close to your age and make us feel young again. All right. Will Missouri win the SEC East?
No. I think when it's all said and done, I just think there's going to be – I can't pinpoint which team's going to pass them, but I think they're not there just yet. They're having their first taste of success in the SEC, but I think it's still a little too early.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of pressure because now they only, I think, have a one-game lead over everybody else. You're going to have some tiebreakers. I think South Carolina ends up winning it. I think they end up somehow getting the tiebreaker. They have the tiebreaker with Missouri if it ends up head-to-head with them, but I think even though they haven't played well, South Carolina has not played well this year.
It's just they haven't really had that glamour that would be considered a top 10 team. They've been winning games, but even when they're winning games, they really don't look great.
Yeah. Okay. You're not a baseball guy. We had a controversial call last night that Boston won. Big Papi.
Oh, yeah.
Big Papi. Now, he's had some clutch hits. Is Big Papi, David Ortiz, more clutch than Derek Jeter?
I would probably say yes. I mean, not being a big baseball guy, just off of what I know, I would say yes. It seems like he's been in these situations and stepped up to the call each time, which, Jeter obviously too, but I would say Big Papi, yes.
It's getting closer. You know what? I love Jeter. He did it. He made clutch plays not just with his bat, though. He kind of made that big, remember that backhanded flip he made years ago to get Giambi at the plate? And I'm going to, that's tough. That's tough.
Sticking with Jeter?
I'm going to stick with Jeter. I'm going to stick with the glamour boy. Okay. Will Shane miss any regular season games? Shane Behannon.
I'm going to go out here, and Rick Pitino will get mad if he heard me saying this, but I'm going to say no, he will not. I just think it'll be quickly resolved.
And one last one. Will UK start 5 freshmen in basketball?
No. I think Willie Cauley-Stein's going to start if he's healthy. Alex Porters, I think, may have a bigger role than people say. I would just say no.
All right, another great show with Nick Coffey. He brings it every time he's on.
Thanks for having
with
me.
us. And listen to him weekdays, 5 to 6 on 1450 The Sports Buzz. And we'll be back next week. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be here at 11 o'clock, 11 to 12 every single week. The Sunday Sports Buzz presented by livingforless.org.
Your best friend, there's one thing that you know. Before you drive around in any city or town, you want to show her up, yeah, this is how you roll. That's what we're all about. Smart shoppers, 'cause this is how you roll.
Hi, I'm Jim Weeks. At MaxCare, no project is too big. We have the capabilities to handle the smallest residential project to the largest commercial undertaking. We even clean big houses like this one. And everyone has been abuzz about our amazing 4 areas for $99 special. We want to let everyone know that MaxCare also cleans upholstery, ceramic tile, and air ducts. We also install and refinish hardwood floors dust-free. MaxCare, locally owned and family operated. Give us a call, 636-4629.
The day of the accident was a normal day for me. I'm driving down a busy road. The speed limit's about 50 miles per hour. As soon as the impact happened, my body just jolted forward. The pain that I experienced immediately afterwards was so intense. The migraine headache and the numbness in my fingers. Immediately after